You've heard about IQ, you've heard about EQ, but what about TQ? And how might that help you reach your organization's ESG and sustainability goals? Well, hello and welcome to Boost Your TQ Technology Intelligence. And I promise you, this is going to be deep, and it goes a lot deeper and more richly than you might expect. And I'm glad you're here. My name is Roger Courville, and welcome to another episode of Thought Leader Conversations, sponsored by the crew here at Virtual Venues, where you can instantly scale your virtual and hybrid event production team in a way that helps you focus on something other than tech. But we're not here to talk about us today. I have the privilege of having Pamela Sammarco with me, CEO of Green Training Associates, a full-service talent development firm. And I'm just going to be kind of casual in illuminating a couple of her details here because I'm going to ask her to speak a little more about herself. And because she's got this long list of accomplishments that will just warm your heart. They've got a mission to develop people's capabilities and to solve world challenges. And one of the details along the way I'm going to ask her about is how you get a Master of Science degree in IO as an IO psychology practitioner. That just is curious to me. So Pam works with executive clients to drive impact and business growth with talent development solutions for all kinds of different organizations. She specializes in green and technology sectors, including tech, clean tech, renewable energy, green buildings, environmental science, food, recycling, sustainability industries. And I could go on and on. Pam, I am so glad you're here. Tell us a little more about who you are and what you do.
Hey, Roger, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm glad to talk with your listeners and your viewers today. And I think we're going to have a delightful conversation as two longstanding talent development professionals. We certainly have so much ground to cover, and there's definitely different ways to talk about sustainable technology and TQ because it fits into many places beyond just the sustainability space. And boy, I've got a great story to tell today. So circling back to your IO psychology practitioner question,
Yes.
so the interesting thing about my work is, I chose my career and then I formed my academic path, and I want to work with people and help people thrive and achieve their highest potential from a human behavior standpoint in a business environment. So when I did research on like what the majors were in psychology was, my dad said, you better go to the library and figure out what kind of job you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
As dads would do. And he was right. So I chose, IO psychology, and I formed my undergraduate degree and my Master of Science in Applied Psychology, which is from Stevens Institute of Technology. And that program was really a concentration in HR management, but it really is the underpinning of taking human behavior, predicting behavior, and driving performance through training, coaching, mentoring, career paths, organization development, culture. All of those things that we do as talent development practitioners are, the basis for why I love the evidence, using evidence-based tools. I love assessments. I like to differentiators about an IO psychologist are, numerous, where there's the rigor, there's a focus on the organizational outcomes. So I always start with organizational impact, and I look at it like pieces of a puzzle. And I look and say, okay, what levers need to be pulled in order to drive performance for the organization? So then I look at the root causes of where the gaps are, because I do a gap analysis: current state, what's the desired state, how do we close the gap, and what are the things? So it's not just training, but there's many reasons. There could be business processes, it could be leadership issues, there could be things that get in the way of people performing. So I like to say I change people's lives as a talent development professional and as a consultant for 15 years in my business. And then I have a 24-year global corporate career prior to that. So I'm in my career. I love what I do. And from when I chose my major in college to today, I still get up every day with a passion to help people thrive, build sustainable organizations, and build the bench strength from, onboarding through succession planning and training, leadership development, and growth mindset. There's so many ways to do that. And I thrive in this environment where I can identify how ways to help my clients and make sure their organizations are running smoothly. And certainly technology is one of my first loves. So I love to get, dive in and see, what would you, where should we begin our conversation?
Well, maybe that is a good place to start. Let's start with TQ. And as I said, for those of you that are listening here, right, I said right up front that this is a whole lot deeper, and that than you might just expect, because you might think, oh, technology intelligence. I know what it is. I know how technology works. What else? And I promise you, Pam is gonna is gonna take us a whole lot more deeply than that. Pam, define TQ and how it relates to accelerating this sustainable business growth that you talk about.
Yeah. And so TQ, so we're talking about alphabet soup today in today's conversation, right? IQ is intelligent quotient, but I look at that as knowledge worker intelligence because we're in the knowledge economy. We've got emotional intelligence, which is emotional and social intelligence. That's how well you relate to others, how self-aware you are, um, you know, paying attention to the emotional cues and personality styles. Then you've got CQ, which is another acronym, which is cultural intelligence. That's the willingness to accept and that of different cultures in an organization. And then you've got TQ, which is technology intelligence, and that's where the heartbeat of what today's conversation is. And I have courses on all the other Qs, so I can help with those. But today, technology intelligence is critical. So let me begin with the broad landscape of the tech sector as we see so much going on. The digital revolution, artificial intelligence, and their accelerated pace of technology implementation, it's sending a tidal wave of change in every organization's workforce needs. Employees are collaborating, communicating, they're working from anywhere, anytime in jobs that don't have an on site presence requirement. Although we are seeing a return to hybrid environments since the pandemic,
Mhm.
but that's changed the workforce forever, and it's changed organizations' cultures to realize that flexibility and responsiveness to work-life balance is essential, especially with the young workforce that's coming in, the Gen Y and Gen Z have an expectation for that balance. But it's also because technology enables people to work anytime, anywhere, pretty much. And the on-site, which is interesting, people are coming back into the office. They're being asked to come back, but they want to be there for specific reasons. You may have collaboration needs. It's going to be nice to be sitting in front of a whiteboard where you're surrounded by your peers and you're talking about a business problem and you're whiteboarding it and you're able to bring in, get lunch together and talk in person. Like the human touch is returning, and companies I see are being selective over when they bring their workforce back into the office. Some have mandates where you're in a couple of days a week. I think we're going to see a shift, but technology enables it
Right.
to be
Well,
flexible. So,
I've
yeah.
been, I mean, I started in 1999 in the conferencing industry, right? Audio conferencing, web conferencing. At that time, the bandwidth didn't support video conferencing like it does today, a couple, 2.5 decades later. And interestingly, it is therefore that's the technology that has enabled a big chunk of remote work, right? What we take for granted now, not that long ago, didn't work that well. Interestingly, therefore, I pay a lot of attention to not only what the trends are, but this recent thing where there is tension between senior management going, "Hey, we want you back in the office," and people going, "Well, we don't want to be back in the office," or and I think this is what I heard you just say. Give me a good reason to be back in the office, right? And this is just my own. Now goes from the research that I've seen to my own instinct. It is transforming from there's a segment of the population, and I'm probably even one of them, like as a Gen Xer, where I'm like, don't just tell me to come back in the office. Give me a reason that talks about the mutually created value. Why is it of value to the organization? Why is it of value to me, as opposed to just giving me a mandate to come back in the office because you don't like managing remotely? One of the things that we would do over and over the company that I co-founded when I left Microsoft, we would do these broad adoption projects where we would roll out conferencing within an organization. And interestingly, success was dramatically tied to management's willingness to change how they lead and manage. Meaning, would they step up to leading and managing remote people as opposed to meaning they would have to change maybe some of the ways that they say do something like an employee check-in or a team meeting or those kinds of things. So anyway, I ramble a little bit, but I think I just heard you say that part of this shifting landscape of late has been a function of management or leadership communicating value. And I don't think there's anybody on the planet that would say it's never okay to work remotely. The question is when and where is the right place? Is it okay to be remote? When and where do you really need to be in person? Because frankly, there is a time you really need to be in person to be effective in certain roles.
I agree. And, we're both, longstanding. Like I go back into the 1990s too with two-way video conferencing, satellite broadcast business television work, which was interactive distance learning. I agree with you. The path of change now that the majority of people are experiencing, because we were on the innovative edge of that, right? And now we're backing into like this is the norm for the majority of the workforce, is where some shift comes in. The pandemic, I think, did a couple of things. It shone a light on the organizational gaps in terms of management
Mm.
skills and the organization's management, the ability for them to, and like the ad hoc informal conversations that would help get things done changed organization culture. So now management, if the person's not physically present, where are they? What they're doing to work on deliverables and be held accountable for work and to be as deep in their work as they need to be, because it shifted people's mindset. Like I've been in my own business for 15 years and I had a home office with my job at Lucent Technology. So the discipline of work was normal because I had deliverables. I had ownership of results that I had to drive for my work. I had the opportunity to work wherever I needed to work because I traveled extensively globally for a while. Those variables just mean that you compartmentalize and you have action items and deliverables and project work and accountability and ownership to get done what you need to get done, but it has to get done by a certain date and to the standards of the company. So people that were then sent home were no longer working in the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. They're going, okay, like I don't know how to work my work day and I'm distracted for a variety of reasons, whether it's COVID, whether it's homeschooling kids, whether it's the lack of ability to sit in front of your computer on Zoom meetings and make sure your work is done. Leaders were having trouble, team leaders were having trouble connecting their people to the work because it was more informal and you're in the office. So you can then see someone in the lunchroom and say, hey, don't forget you owe me, blah, blah, blah. And I think HR has had a seismic shift too, because they're sending the workforce home. The remote workforce policies, besides setting COVID aside, shifted the way people were managed and whether HR operated to ensure performance standards were being met, work was being done, employees were safe, and that they were productive. Companies, I think, it tripled during the pandemic of companies that were installing software, tracking software on people's company laptops, where they were monitoring keystrokes, how much time they're spending on the internet, how much time they have Microsoft Office documents open, meeting time. Like they literally ended up wanting to, it's sort of like that monitoring. And that's that moment of people feeling that that's, you know, it's a tool, but it is, there were lawsuits that came of some of that. Someone got let go and they, made a lawsuit that the accusations weren't right. So we could go on about that piece of the pandemic, which has shifted. But I think it's about resiliency, agility, productivity, team management, coaching people differently, and also giving them the flexibility. Moms would homeschool their kids from 9 to 3, and then they would work 4 to 12 midnight, right? So there was an opportunity for them to get their 8 hours in, but just a different 8 hours. And how available are they to other team members that rely on them to do their part before they could do their part? There were all of those things. So technology has been, and now it's been, I think, sort of right sizing and the ability to be in the office and the reason to be in the office, and that they show up in the office, and that there's other people. Because I've heard stories about people saying, oh, I'm supposed to be in the office. They check the badge swipes and all that. And then I'm the only one there. So what good is my being in the office if my coworkers are not going to be in? So there's really a turmoil in organization cultures, to try and figure this out, even though they're saying, some companies are pretty strict. You will be in the office Monday to Friday. You will be back to the job. Some companies in the financial sector were doing that. I think, Elon Musk was having his people come back into the office at what was Twitter, now is X, and Jamie Dimon of, JP Morgan Chase. So we're going to see more change. I think it's going to be settling into a new normal. And I think that we're still reeling from, how do we operate as a company, and how do we get the most productivity from people, and how do we engage our employees? Because this is an employee engagement opportunity, which is the reason to be in the office, which is being with people. I've actually heard the younger generation wants to be in the office because they're still learning, especially if they're new employees. They're in an onboarding phase where being in the office with more experienced coworkers is a huge benefit. And then the young professionals really want to learn from the more seasoned workforce, and all of those are good reasons. So I think it's going to depend really on the corporate culture and how they communicate and listen, because they've got to listen to the employees' needs, and then they need to respond with the business needs.
Yeah,
And
I
where the
agree.
intersection of those is where the challenges are.
Well,
So
one of
yeah,
the
I
things
want to talk about automation too. You've got a question. Go ahead.
well, no, I was just going to agree because if I'm sensing correctly, the underlying heart, your underlying heart, at the end of the day, we're still talking about people, right? And
Exactly.
yes, generations might be influenced by different things. And to your point, as I understand it as well, Gen Z has taken a pendulum shift back toward sociality in a different way than say millennials. Uh, but one of the challenges becomes, what is the nature of being social? I'll use an example just here, right? So our little dozen person company technically has an office, and two people go into the office. And third of our company lives nowhere near Portland, Oregon. And we live on Slack all day long, right? Chat and it is beautiful to watch what happens when people are in each other's lives. Hey, got to run the dog to the vet, right? There's a personal connection born of being together apart, even when we've got employees that we've never met face to face because they live part of the country away. But to your
That's
point,
a good point. The humanization of the workplace is very, very evident, where it's like you can say, I got to run my dog to the vet, where prior, in stricter corporate culture and in the earlier part of my career, you never talked about things that were personal, and that you could say, I need an hour to go do this, and I'm going to come back and finish my work day. And then you actually, it's so much more comfortable and humanizing.
yeah.
You make a
Well,
great point about it's about people, and companies are starting to realize that the shift in where the where is the power in the workplace? It was the employer over the employees, and now it's more the employees over the employers. And that's because there's a war for talent and a talent shortage, which is then driving employees to have a choice about where they want to work. And if a company doesn't accommodate, then
Who
they
wants to work
change
for a
jobs.
company that doesn't treat you like a human being? I mean, you mentioned earlier, like people, organizations installing like keylog trackers. And I remember a couple of years ago, the first time I saw go by on Amazon a mouse jiggler, and I'm like, a mouse jiggler? What the heck? Turns out it's a device that you can buy on Amazon for 20 bucks or something. And you you plug your mouse into your laptop and set the mouse on top of this thing, and it randomly will make the mouse move so that when you're not at your computer, it's still moving your mouse.
Well,
Uh,
that's not the kind of automation we want, though.
well, right. And
You know?
think about I use that as an example of the opposite of, say, what I have the good fortune of experiencing here at virtual venues, where it's like, well, wait, oh, yeah, you know what? It maybe sometimes is too personal, but if I know Pam's having a bad day, or recently one of our employees just had a grandparent pass away, oof, everybody's like, get the hell out of here. Well, that's what we do as human beings, right? As opposed to, and back to, the thinking about how we lead and manage in a remote or hybrid sort of way. Maybe my old way was peripatetic, right? It was like management by walking around, and I could walk around the office and kind of both in an ad hoc way develop a relationship, but also in an ad hoc way just kind of do a check-in with you and figure out where you were at on the project you were working on. And now if we're doing it remotely, I can't do it that way. And the question is, am I, as the leader or manager, going to adapt? And I think of one of the points that you made a little earlier, part of this landscape is shifting out from underneath people who don't want to adapt. And so,
Well, exactly. And so, I have a topic that I teach for virtual cultures and help managers be better at virtual culture management. And one of the things is to, ask those check-in questions, not how are you doing, but more specific questions. What obstacles? What can I help you facilitate? Where are where are the hot spots where you need help? And on and on. So one of the most important things, and this is the part about being in the office, is that remote worker loneliness is an all-time high. So it's not ideal to isolate because of the need for that people and the human interaction beyond. I joke when I go to an in-person event, I love being with the three-dimensional people. I'm so
yeah,
done being in my office on the screen watching people. And that's why video is so important, because 93% of our communication, and I teach this to coaches and middle managers particularly, 93% of communication is being on video, so that you can see someone, because you want to see their facial expressions, you want to see their body language. We know nonverbal communication, only 7% are the words. That's a standard. 55% are the tone of voice, rate, pitch, etc. And then the balance are your gestures, your eye contact, and body language. All of those factors are what we receive when we're in person, and there's nothing like a face-to-face meeting that helps inform a manager about a person's status. So being isolated in the home office is creating loneliness. I think virtual communities create some of that too, because we've gone off of being in person. And generally, there's been a migration toward virtual communities because of how much social media plays a role in our lives, and how
mhm.
we think we can communicate with others and be human through the use of technology. And not that it's impossible, because Slack is a brilliant tool for collaboration. I use it all the time for two of my organizations. So there's such value in knowing the right. So it's, I think, choices, and it's priorities, and it's decision making, knowing what to do, when to do, and how to connect with people, and when you should be in person. There's an intelligence, and it's not technology intelligence, but it's probably an emotional intelligence and a leadership intelligence to bring people together at the right times, and to be checking on the folks in your teams regularly, and to have those one-to-one meetings with them, to have weekly team meetings, to have in-person gatherings, to integrate what's going on with work and life, because you blend work and life at this point, and it's so much more natural for everyone to feel like they can breathe a little bit and they can still contribute and do their job. So, there's a lot to be said for, you can have 100% blind trust, and you want to monitor, because people then, they sort of fall away when they go quiet, they're not commenting, or their camera is off all the time. There's definitely some check-ins that are more frequent check-ins from a communication standpoint. And I advocate in-person gatherings where possible. Even, I mean, COVID's going to be with us, so monitoring COVID and mask wearing and all those good things still need to happen.
Pam, what is the data science behind this kind of revolution, this TQ revolution that you speak about?
Well, the data science starts with the fact that automation is a major driver, and workforce automation is creating millions of new jobs and replacing humans with computers that perform millions of other jobs. So, automation is a major driver, from the standpoint that by 2025, which is just 2 short years away, 85 million jobs will be replaced by automation. And this is according to CNBC's World Economic Forum data. So 85 million jobs will be replaced by automation. However, 97 million new jobs will be created to serve companies' new needs. And that's in the same CNBC World Economic Forum study. So when you think about it, we're going to have a net new 12 million jobs. Then, coupled with data from the HR Business Review, only 28% of talent acquisition leaders, those are your recruiters in HR, report that they have internal candidates as an important source of people to fill vacancies, which means that they're not keeping up their training and their talent development and professional development and skill building and making sure that people are staying current so that they can be used in succession planning. So 70% of employees then report that they don't have a mastery of the skills they need to do their jobs. 70% of employees don't have the skills they need to do their jobs. And only 12% of employees actually apply new skills learned in their L&D programs on their jobs. So at those data points, we've got automation happening. And what we need to look at then is upskilling, reskilling, retention strategies, more sophisticated hiring requirements for human machine relationships. And generally, with that labor shortage, we have a skilled labor shortage where our available workforce is mismatched with the available jobs. So this gap is only going to get bigger with TQ, or technology intelligence, as a premium requirement, because employer requirements are moving faster than workforce readiness and learning agility.
Interesting the way that you just put that. Let me reflect that back to you and make sure I just heard that correctly, because if so, there's another parallel in historical technology trends. Did I just hear you correctly when you said that the rate of change is outstripping the rate of change of workforce development? Did I catch that correctly?
It's the rate of technology is outpacing workforce readiness. So organizations are not keeping up professional development skills. Employees are not having the skills that they need to master their job. Employers maybe are not putting enough money and funding into professional development. There's a continuum. That's a very broad statement. So what I see is, when we've got a volatile economy, the first thing that companies do will contract in terms of their marketing budgets and headcount reduction. Like, those are easy cost cuts, but
Right.
that doesn't help enable the long-term strategy. There's a talent shortage in the world, right? In generally speaking, there's a huge talent shortage. And that talent shortage tells us that we're not going to have enough workers to accomplish the work. And there's going to then be a revenue impact to that, because companies won't have the workforce that's going to deliver their business goals, their products and services. And that, to me, the underpinning of that also is the speed of and rate of technology is outpacing how quickly people get up to speed and are ready to use technology in their jobs, and or their job is being replaced, and the automation of their job means that the job goes away, and then what do you do with that worker? So companies will sometimes exit the worker because their skills are obsolete and they don't invest in the upskilling and reskilling and new career paths for those people. So I look at Verizon, for example. They call their employees Verizon citizens. They had a huge initiative where I think 500,000 of their workforce were jobs were going to be automated, and they took those people and they upskilled them and reskilled them and redirected their career paths instead of exiting them from the company. So workforce automation happens, but the question is, what do you do with your workforce, and how do you first of all keep their skills where they need to be for the job? So it's paying attention to training requirements. And number two, if their job is going to go away, what do they need to do to prepare? So I'll give you some examples of jobs. Machines are going to replace humans to perform jobs like data entry, administrative, accounting, bookkeeping, assembly and factory workers, because there are robotics coming in, customer service. Now, even when you call up, you get an AVR that is, an automated voice that's an AI person. How can I help you? What do you need? And you say a few words and they give you answers on an automated fashion, right? So
Right.
those are examples of machines replacing humans already. You can't get a live person on the phone sometimes when you call. There's all kinds of those data intensive jobs that can be replaced. So new jobs that are going to grow in demand to serve automation, you're going to have people that need to oversee that automation or develop it. Data analysts, scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, big data specialists, process automation specialists, digital transformation, information security, software and application developers. So those are where the job growth is going to be. That's just a high level, but that information comes from the World Economic Forum. And primary growth area by vertical sector will be healthcare, life sciences, pharma, technology, of course, and green sector or sustainability around climate tech and green tech and all of those areas of sustainability, because the underpinning of sustainability is technology, and innovation is being used to solve the problems of reducing carbon emissions and so forth in every sector. So technology, climate tech, clean tech, green tech, those are some labels, if you will, around the use of tech in the sustainability and green sector
Yeah.
space.
Well,
So
one thing that
yeah.
I mentioned a couple minutes ago that there was a parallel that I was aware of that when I said, hey, am I understanding correctly what you're saying? And it actually ties in also to what you were just talking about. Clayton Christensen was a Harvard business prof, or maybe it was Yale. I think it was Harvard. Anyway, couple decades ago, wrote a really influential book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And then a couple books later was like Seeing What's Next. And I remember the opening, the core challenge was that in the process of business development, often products development was outstripping the development of new features around products, was outstripping a market's ability to adopt and adapt to those new features. And it would create this kind of delta that would put pressure on profit margin, et cetera, by the nature of then how people would respond. Interestingly, that's really parallel to what you're just describing about the nature of the business organization growing at a rate of change that is faster than the people adapting and adopting this new, which creates a delta, which, as we well know, I mean, it's well publicized that there is a worker shortage. And one of the things that I see frequently is a response of fear as in, oh my gosh, you're going to outsource my job to a robot or the equivalent thereof, or artificial intelligence or the equivalent thereof, without realizing, oh, here's what I can do to get ahead of the game and reposition. So to your point about upskilling and reskilling people, anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting because he did a lot of work around the subject of innovation and how innovation may create a problem, but it also can be used to solve the problem. And it's not an unsolvable problem. It just naturally creates a problem when the pace of change outstrips the pace of change by those in being affected, adopting or adapting. And of course, 50 years ago, Alvin Toffler predicted it with what we now know of what we call future shock, right? He's like, the pace of change will get to this place where it creates shock, culture shock within localities, right? Whether that's geographic or an organization's culture, just in the same way that you might experience significant shock if you went to a different culture where their foods or means of greeting each other or something were radically different than what you were used to. And that level of culture shock would be one of the consequences of the speed of technological change. And I think we've been seeing it and we continue to see it. Now the question is now what? And I love just the fact that you're wrapping your heads around this with regard to workforce trends or even thinking through the business case of why something like TQ is important to workforce retention. So just out of curiosity, particularly given your role in talent development, what is that human resources or leadership or training leadership role for how to even think about it, let alone embrace what to do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question, Roger. I love the progressive, innovative organizations. I've worked for my entire career. To your point about innovation so my experience with innovation is deep. I've worked from startups to global brands. I work with HR executives, CEOs, COOs, and technology executives in my work and my career. And so that experience kind of pulls together the story in response to what you're saying, because truly the innovation is never perfect, but it's a beginning place. And innovate, we can't use the same thinking to solve the problems at hand. And that's certainly a famous quote from, I think, Albert Einstein, right? So we've got to innovate in order to solve problems. We also need to lead change, because when you innovate, that means change. So having a great change strategy is critical. When you have an innovation, there's an impact to it, and you have to plan that change, because we're creatures of habit. And humans need to have consistency. We look for patterns of behavior. So to lead your employees, your customers, your suppliers, everyone through those changes is critical. So I teach both innovation and leading change as part of my power skills, which is part of what we'll talk about in a short bit. But the HR role is critical here. So when I talk to HR executives, this is about automation workforce planning. It's also about how to unleash your employees' potential. So what we want to do is look at HR's role in the role of strategic business drivers. The future readiness themes, we want to look at individual and organizational resiliency. And there are new future HR jobs that will create that. Director of well-being, work from home facilitator. So we're talking about HR strategy needs to be changed in order to plan the workforce automation. So there's two parts to this: is you have individual organizational resiliency, organizational trust and safety are critical, creativity, innovation, data literacy, human and machine partnerships, and other types of HR roles that get expanded on. So there's HR jobs of the future. I'm glad to share more about that, because I think that's a topic in and of itself. But the people in automation workforce planning, we look at the 5 trends of HR using technology within its function, because HR now is automating, right? You can have a video job interview with AI, and
Right.
there's not even a person present, and those kind of things. So HR uses technology now in its platform. There is an organizational investment in digital transformation for a data culture. So we're working toward data culture. The use of AI is huge. I wrote a thought leadership post on LinkedIn on AI, machine relationships and partnerships in robotics, job automation, virtual reality or X reality, because there's mixed reality, virtual and augmented reality. So they call it X reality because there's so many versions of that. But the bottom line for HR, here's the thing: HR increases the efficiency and effectiveness of the use of technology for its culture and its people in the entire employee life cycle. HR has an increasing role in ethics, data privacy, and psychological safety. HR also and talent development need a seat at that strategic table in regard to the technology and the business's digital future. And we want to identify HR's technology for its functional needs, plan employee redeployment and reskilling, career paths. When you automate jobs, you want to have a plan for those people. Do they have skill? Are we in a skills first organization where you can take those skills, redeploy that employee somewhere else? Can you upskill them and get them on a different career path? So you have to have that workforce automation plan. And you want to design jobs and align technology capabilities within that business strategy. And you cultivate and elevate internal talent, because you're not going to get a lot of external talent given the talent shortage in the market. Take the employees that you have and invest in them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could probably spend another hour just on that. To me, one of the core challenges is what I think of as a building versus a growing strategy. And it takes a bit to grow your people, right? A building strategy thinks about people like interchangeable parts, at least in my opinion, right? And is like, oh, well, that person's not suited. We'll get rid of them and get in somebody who has the skills instead of growing people from one point A to point B. And if I'm not mistaken, and we'll get down to our last couple questions here, you refer to power skills for technical professionals, right? Which is a people strategy. What are those, and how do they help you unlock this whole thing?
Power skills are um, developing your people with their professional skills. They used to be called soft skills, but really, when you've got someone with technical and technology expertise, you want to layer in the professional skills, or what I call power skills, that elevate their performance. So they're really smart. They've got lots of credentials and certifications. When you look at an IT professional's professional development plan, it's not including some of the things that are those people skills. So the technical credentials and certifications are not enough to be successful in your organization. Companies hire people for IQ, but fire them for missing EQ. So
Right.
smart technology professionals need the people smarts too, because what we do is our job. How we do it is our work relationships and how we manage our relationships with other people. So growing technology professionals, growth and development, and these are STEM professionals, but these skills are relevant for every organization. Let me say that to elevate any person's skills with these that I propose, help implement change, enable the business, drive efficiencies, and reduce risk. So you want to move barriers out of the way for people to perform, build their skills, collaborate, achieve performance metrics. And I've written an article on Power TQ Skills, which is a solution I offer, which fuels the technology intelligence for actionable business results. They're simple things: connect personality styles, working with external customers on delivery excellence, critical thinking, leading by example with DEI, driving urgency with an intelligent risk taking. I have team leader skills, and then I have individual skills. And there's a full article on how to help you get there, is what this Power TQ skill solution is that I offer.
Thank you. And, and I'll just say this because if you're not watching and you're just listening, greentrainingassociates.com is where you can get a hold of Pam at greentrainingassociates.com. And Pam, I'm seriously, I know there's a ton of resources there at your website, not least of which are some visuals that give people a visual element for putting together kind of the way that you think in frameworks and the nature of some of this stuff. Maybe as just kind of a wrap-up question here, what do you recommend to listeners here as the most important business actions when it comes to what you call TQ?
Sure. I love to build sustainable organizations. So I recommend developing your people's interpersonal and professional skills, a growth mindset, ensuring that you upskill, reskill, mentor, have career path solutions that enable your workforce to thrive, and develop a skills first mindset where there's agility and flexibility to drive the organization's needs. And TQ, technology intelligence, is just one of those strategic intelligences that every organization needs to pay attention to. So I'm delighted to be here today, Roger. This is an exciting conversation. I hope your listeners found value, and I'm excited to speak with anyone that would like more information. So absolutely reach out to me, and I'm glad to make sure that we help you with delivering impact. And building a sustainable organization means that your people are thriving and achieving their highest potential and driving the performance that your organization is seeking.
Thank you again so much, Pam. And as I promised each and every one of you at the top of the show, this was going to be so much more deep than you might have initially thought of when we threw out that little thing TQ. And we'll appreciate Pam Sammarco's idea, not only at the top level, but in the deep place that we've spent the last hour. Thank you again, Pam. Pam at greentrainingassociates.com. You can visit her website at greentrainingassociates.com. And again, thank you to our virtual venues crew here, where you can instantly scale your hybrid and event production team as our sponsor today. We'll see you on the next episode of Thought Leader Conversations.